the narrative that the Trump administration is using is that they have to attack Yemen because Yemen has been targeting ships in the Red Sea. However, Yemen has made it very clear. When we talk about Yemen, we're talking about the de facto government in the north of Yemen, where the majority of the Yemeni population lives, about 60% of the population. Not the puppet regime in the south, which is basically controlled by the US, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. And is totally illegitimate and has an unelected government in the south of Yemen. In the north, where the majority of the population lives, there is a revolutionary nationalist government, which has a liberation theology, Islamist orientation, like Hezbollah, which is referred to as the so-called Houthis, but that's actually a derogatory term. It's not what they're called. They're called Ansar Allah, like Hezbollah in Lebanon. They're very similar. And the U.S. has this propaganda narrative claiming that supposedly Ansar Allah are Iranian proxies, which is completely BS. It's bogus. It's not true. Now, they're allies politically with Iran, like Hezbollah in Lebanon are allies with Iran, but they're not proxies. Ansar Allah, like Hezbollah, has its origins as an indigenous resistance movement in Yemen, just like Hezbollah emerged in Lebanon as a response to Israel's illegal military occupation of southern Lebanon in the 1980s. Starting in 2014, going into 2015, they started a war on Yemen, and Saudi Arabia, with U.S. support, spent billions and billions and billions of dollars brutally bombing Yemen, the poorest country in West Asia, destroying civilian areas, devastating the country, killing hundreds of thousands of people, using hunger as a weapon, intentionally targeting food production sites to try to starve the Yemenis into submission. And they failed.
Trump administration, Donald Trump himself has said, this is a permanent war, that they're doing this to stop the attacks on shipping. Yet Ansar Allah intervened in the Red Sea before the genocide resumed in Gaza because of a blockade, explicitly because of the Gaza blockade. And I wanted to ask you, though, about what your impression is about these strikes that they are launching now, because during the Biden administration, these missile strikes were actually quite troublesome. Israel now has the sirens back on every single day since the resumption of the genocide began, and U.S. Aircraft carriers in the Red Sea and elsewhere, in the Mediterranean and elsewhere, are facing Yemeni hypersonic missiles seemingly every couple of days now. So what's your impression about this part of it? Because you mentioned the context of their resistance, but there's this element of the poorest people in the world using these incredibly advanced weapons to essentially assert the right to protect.
Trump says that Iran should stop providing support to Yemen. Okay, let's make a deal. Iran will stop providing support to Yemen when the U.S. stops providing weapons and ammunition and missiles to Israel to carry out genocide. That sounds fair to me. But let's see what will happen then. We know that the Yemenis will continue fighting even if they don't have support from Iran, because they've been fighting for decades. The Israeli regime would collapse without U.S. support. Let's be real. It is the U.S. that has been propping up the Israeli regime for decades. And this is why even Netanyahu famously said that Israel is an aircraft carrier for the United States.